We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP.
Welcome back to Security and Compliance Weekly. Hey, a couple of announcements. In an overabundance of caution, we have decided to flip this year's Security Weekly Unlocked to a virtual format, in case you hadn't heard. Safety of our listeners and hosts is our number one priority, of course, and we're going to be missing seeing you all in person, but we still want you to join us. It will now be called Security Weekly Unlocked Virtual. It's going to take place on Thursday, December 16th, one day only. It'll be 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Register for free, securityweekly.com/unlocked. Also coming up, that'll be like Thursday, December 2nd. Our next live webcast is going to focus on what's under the XDR hood. You go to securityweekly.com/webcast, register. You can also check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Alrighty. Back to the discussion. So many thoughts. Somebody whispered in my ear over one of our channels that because this is a security and compliance show, someone suggested that compliance is perhaps a significant factor in what, among other things, is sort of killing that sort of corporate and even personal, I guess, curiosity to discover and to imagine what can go wrong, therefore trying to protect it and keep it safe. Joe, would you like to expand on that in the form of a question for our esteemed guest?
I can do that. Yeah, I mean, as we're talking about it, and I think we've all agreed how important that intellectual curiosity is and the ability to unleash that, to dig and uncover. But do we think, and I know you've talked about this before, that check the box mentality, the amount of budget associated with compliance and security is really limiting that ability to be curious. That we're forcing, do we think that we are forcing with compliance regulations and that check the box mentality, are we forcing the shutdown of that curiosity or the ability for them to really unleash more of that, that passion and drive for the actual core security values that we grew up with? Question for the group.
For the group or for John?
For John, yeah, take it, John.
Well, me, like, for instance, like, this isn't like, if I had my druthers, for instance, and I was in a place and it didn't have and it's building a team, I'd be like probably forced, I'd be asking people to politely and fun, join some localized CTF stuff or something some kind of internal, battle just to have fun, replicate networks and stuff. I think it depends on what we're doing. But I think you want to keep it fun. You want to keep it, I do agree with you. Sometimes the compliance and filling out forms and the restrictive nature of, access to things and the data. I think, yeah, of course, the compliance can definitely kill that thing. But I think there's other things you could do to invite people, within the time that you have as employees to make sure it's fun to continue to, learn and expand. And I know that sometimes organizations can get really taxed in the amount of stuff they do. But I actually am one of the organizations I advise is Visions 2030. And actually one of the things they do is come into corporate places and institutions too, and universities to help their team take time to imagine, to just sort of like meditate, and then give them exercises to imagine. And it's amazing how little time is left in most organizations just for that kind of brainstorming. I mean, I know there's like sort of like the ESG movement in corporate, like sort of like the environmental social governance thing, which once again, it's funny that ESG in big corporations is sort of meeting DAOs, like the idea of like, you know what I mean? That like, oh, we want to, we want employees to feel more comfortable by, with these elements that, the company's doing good. There's a social aspect to it, and governance. You have say over what creamer is in the refrigerator. But like, I think like you want, like for security though, you would want to create, to me, just spitballing ideas, events inside the company that allow people to have fun while learning, in addition to, their regular duties for compliance. And of course, just whatever their role is in the security apparatus at that company.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
No,
one
go ahead, Jeff.
quick point. I definitely think it's our responsibility to advocate for that curiosity and the percentage of work that should be done focused on, that check the box compliance, because it is required, but that's a minimum mandate. We should allow that freedom and continue to pound on, leadership, clients, whichever end of the spectrum you're on, for your team to have that space to be able to be curious and to dig and to learn and, to be inspired. It does take a lot more time, but it produces a lot more results. I think it's the education that, we, and maybe just the old school mentality, have. It's our responsibility to continue to advocate for that, so our teams do have space to do those things. So I completely agree. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay. I mean, I don't disagree with the assertion that there are things like compliance that are stifling what needs to be happen. I certainly see that in my day job and in my side job. And one of the reasons why we have this show, that's security and compliance. But what I have always struggled with is this paradox that I see, that on one side of the room, you have people bitching and complaining that compliance is limiting them and keeping them from doing the real tasks at hand, that it's an annoyance and a bother and an expense. And yet organizations that feel that way, that I assess and that I encounter, are essentially trying to do less than what the compliance is requiring, or for, there's no apparent other thing that they're trying to do, and they struggle with trying to demonstrate that they're doing what most people concede as compliance is sort of the bare minimum, the table stakes, the entry level, just the bare bones. I see that as an issue of how compliance has been presented to the world, to organizations, by countless people that are responsible for that role. And I used to just blame auditors, and I used to blame the accounting firms that get into the business. But Joe has helped me to think more open-mindedly about people with an accounting background. But I still see there's a disconnect between what compliance is and what it was intended to be and what it should be. And for lack of compliance, outside of nation states and the government and companies that have had to do it forever for regulatory reasons, like financial services and banks and things like that, maybe some insurance companies, most companies out there, organizations, really struggle with what to do with security. They know they need to do better. They know they should be doing something, but they're they're looking for a checklist. They're looking for a compliance. Just tell us what we need to do. What's the bare minimum? I mean, we had a conversation a couple weeks ago with the Sagers from CIS. The CIS has the top 20, and they only have 20 because they think that's what people can absorb. Not the 350 to 400 requirements that are in PCI, or the some number of requirements that are in, the NIST cybersecurity framework, or the this, that, or the other. Where I see the frustration and the lack of creativity and the lack of imagination, hackers aren't, people that are doing these roles aren't thinking like hackers, but I also see the limitations on the hacker sides of not always realizing what all the restrictions are, and the permutations and the parameters and the limitations and the constraints that organizations necessarily have to follow. I think it's a big mess, personally.
Right. It's funny you say that,
out, John.
That's probably why I love the crypto so much, because it's so unregulated. So both in terms of like I said, both on the amazing, complex heist, which remind me of the old days, combined with both the, unrestricted multiple prong attacks for finding and getting the money back or not. But it's a lot. It's textured, but I do think that ultimately, like, let me give you a metaphor that's probably terrible, but like, we would walk by like a junkyard, and they got like a sign up there, but the sign is not what gets you the checklist. What gets you is a beautiful dog, junkyard dog, just growling, checking every inch, pacing the fence, looking around, goes under cars, looks everywhere. He's hungry. He looks at every fucking inch of that fucking junkyard. You go in there, he's going to tear your ass up. He's going to catch you. He sees you. He smells you. That's what you want, right? The checklist is cool, but you want to hire that person that's like a pit bull prowling everything, or multiple pit bulls, or just any breed of dog, actually. Chihuahuas work too.
Chihuahuas work too. Well, I'll say, like, something that happened to me this year so far is like compliance and stifling creativity, right? Like, my professional life is compliance, but I have this history, came up as a hacker. So when you get me as an employee, as a compliance employee, internal security kind of thing, I put all those skills on the table in the interview. So I make sure that I'm trying to get to the right place, a place that actually does want to do security. And like, me doing compliance just means that I know what the rules are. But hey, I'm a generalist and I can do some other stuff too. So this year, I thought I found one of those companies. And one of the things that, and so it's my, month one or whatever, and I do this little scan or whatever, hey, is our company, something we're not doing right now, is our company's name being mentioned on the dark net at all, or in these different Telegram, Discord, etc. groups that I'm scraping that are threat actors. Let's take a little search. Because they expected a compliance person, even with all this stuff, the compliance kind of hindered creativity there. And it wasn't even all that creative. It was just like normal, what I would do if I, just looking for, are we on anyone's radar kind of stuff. Got in trouble for it. I mean, so it's and decided later on, this is not the company for me, after a couple of instances of stuff like that, where I'm not even scanning the company's resources themselves. I'm just taking a look to see if we're in anybody's mouth, right? Are we on anyone's radar? And totally got in trouble for doing something like that, because I'm the compliance lady. Just go concern yourself with our PCI and our SOC 2 stuff and our privacy stuff, and just do that, and that's it.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies don't want a freaking actual somebody that knows what they're doing in a lot of different realms, Yeah.
And I would, to add to that, I would say that that's part of it too. I mean, when I'm talking about the hacker awareness, situational awareness, I think that extends all the way up the ladder. Like, a lot of, they don't have a lot of good sense about it. Definitely, you know what I mean? I've run into, people, like, get out. But I think, and it wasn't about the actual work, their ideas about security are wrong in every way,
Yeah,
and they
that
don't understand it and have invested no time into it. And that could be okay, but I do think extending the culture to that would be good. I mean, I have, like one of the personal beefs that I continuously have is not a beef, but one thing I notice is that I often see, like, this is an aside, but it makes sense because some of these people read articles, and sometimes the articles are by journalists, and then journalists are not hackers. And then I look at what they're writing, and they're writing an abstraction of an idea that is, sourced by someone. The information they took as sacrosanct is an abstraction of a bad idea by someone in security who either might not be even that good, or B, they're writing ideas that apply to one thing, or that idea is now outdated because people figured out a ton of shit besides that. And then and I feel like that's one interesting effect that I've seen. And then you have people who make decisions, encapsulate those brief moments from a journalist as some kind of, as a directive, as a way to run, to ask of other security professionals. And that also kills,
coincidentally, last week's episode, John, we actually interviewed a cybersecurity journalist, and had a very different conversation, obviously, but not to stick up for journalists. I hear what you're saying, but they do have the opportunity to bring a somewhat objective observation or perspective to some of the things that we're talking about, where there's the fight between the hackers, the security side of folks, the compliance side of folks, the IT side of folks, that type of thing. I mean, I've worked with many clients. I'm sure you guys have had similar experiences, either companies you've worked for or worked on behalf of, where some level of management, like the CEO, read about some whiz bang blinky light product and said, damn it, we got to have one of these things. And there it sat. Everybody's staring at it like, yeah, we don't know what to do with it, but we have to have it because that's solving all of our security problems and creating a whole lot more hassle for us at the same time. I mean,
also,
am I alone in this?
I'm not bagging on journalists directly. I think part of it is like not so much like me blaming journalists per se. It's more about like, you could have an article out. And I think what I want to get at is more on the creative side, the fact that things change so fast in security. You could read an article a week ago and that thing is no longer relevant. So, and that's not on the journalists. What I'm saying is more people extracting stuff from journalists per se, and then mistaking that as like as some sort of document to go by, when it's not so much that I think there's some incredible security journalists. I just meant more in the nature of like this ever-changing landscape that, like I said, it changes from week to week. What was true, earlier this year, I don't think is true as per, I mentioned some of the huge hacks this year, and the nature of those penetrations and how long they went on and how, invasive they were. I think, I think that, so a lot of the stuff that people talk about and bandy about is old, and they're extracting it from various places, I think. And obviously things have gotten so big. There was a time where it was like a small little, community and stuff. So it's easier to sort of, communicate new ideas to that group. But now, it's a worldwide group. So it's impossible to, transmit that everywhere. But I just wanted to make it clear, I wasn't necessarily bagging directly on journalists. I think they serve an amazing, amazing way of disseminating information. I just meant that, you could Google an article that's written and then, it's not relevant anymore, and then make a decision based on what's in there.
No, I hear you. I want to push back a little bit though, and let me start by asking you a question. Back in the day, when you were actively becoming an OG, but you were just a G. I don't know how it works.
I was an F.
Think back to the early days and the way you were breaking into other people's and companies' computers and servers and stuff. How often were you taking advantage, let's say, of just what I would loosely call features that people may or may not have known about or knew how to configure correctly, and so you just got in, versus, oh, I've got to write some sort of script to create an exploit to exploit this weakness that I'm seeing in this executable. I mean, ballpark.
Me? I mean, all right. So for me personally, all right. First of all, maybe I should remind you, my one of before I switched to Linux, right, and doing up Suns and stuff, and other flavors of Unix, is that my favorite was VAX VMS, which was supposed to be one of the most secure systems, right?
Right.
Including, the Bliss 32 incidents. But anyway, the point is that, I actually personally loved that. I mean, of course, there was a misconfigured stuff. Absolutely. Easy as pie. But a lot of the stuff was was very secure. That was part of, I think part of MOD's legend and stuff certainly was figuring out quite a few big things. I think so. For me personally, obviously that's why to this day, I think, and also the other thing too is, to be clear, is that I think it's, this is why I love sneakers, because there's multiple ways in. That's what's so great about having a team in that scenario, both social engineering, all those elements. I'll compare it to hip hop. There's multiple elements that make up the culture. It's not one, it's multiple things that make it great. You know what I mean? That that, and this is true of skateboarding too. It's not just one thing, there's an aesthetic, there's music, there's a language, there's a blah, blah, blah. And I think, and there's different styles of skateboarding, just like there's different styles of hip hop, which hip hop would be considered both, including not just rap, graffiti and dancing and stuff, other parts of it. And I think that's true of back then and now. There's people whose whole discipline is social engineering, which is still a very powerful entryway into getting into places. Huge breaches can take place from a good social engineering, which also, once again, I think is interesting. The idea, I think, and this is tough, companies have bored people faster than they can possibly ever teach them about. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I know what you mean, and yes, it's a complicated tapestry. But what I'm trying to get at is, I saw a headline. I think it was just this morning, maybe it was yesterday. Yet another article talking about we're winding down on the year. What were the biggest breaches and so on and so forth? What were the causes? What are the the top 5 reasons or ways that hackers are breaking in? And still to this day, it's default passwords, weak passwords, guest passwords, trust relationships, misconfigurations, and that's where I agree and disagree that things are changing constantly. I'm like, yeah, they are, but they're not. There are, certainly organized crime, nation state things that, organizations, entities out there that are doing really amazingly creative things, on the dark side. And I would certainly get behind, the argument that, while there's pockets of organizations that are dedicated to doing that, primarily in our national defense, and larger companies that are doing it because they're, they've got huge targets painted on their metaphorical backs. The vast majority, I think, of organizations still out there are falling prey to, they're victims of opportunity. Nobody's specifically targeting them. They're just out there trolling to see who's susceptible to whatever exploit or whatever malware package that they're using this week, whether they've created it or not. So I'm very torn on the argument that things are changing quickly. Yeah, they are, but some things, seem to have not changed at all. And I say that as an old timer.
No, I agree. I think that's both equally true. I think that part of it, what I would say to that is that this goes to the heart of what I'm saying about that people get onboarded so fast without attempts to understand that hacker situational awareness. Unless you, in the absence of like an old school, and when I say old school, I mean, I don't even think that applies because I don't consider myself old school. You know what I mean? You just need a day with me on the computer and you'd find out. But that being said, I think that it's not so much. Now I lost my train of thought. I think the part is that you need to learn the hacker awareness, because that is the part of it. Like you having dropped into systems on default, right? Then you versus a checklist. If you actually done it, then the chances are that you would possibly be more aware of it. That's the same thing. Like just when I was like spitballing an idea about like, just internal, yes, there are people who do CTF and go into security, but like obviously, and do, some team games against each other just to learn. But like, there's a lot of security professionals that have never done that. And like, they could benefit from that in the sense, like just setting up a fake network and let them, play through it. You'll see instantly, what they know or what they don't know. If they just go down a checklist or they use an app. But even then, it's still, a lot of people still don't actually have enough field experience to know those kind of things innately. So of course, when they configure it in a rush, they do that. Look, I know mistakes happen. People, push stuff to GitHub. You're in a rush for a commit. You push a password or a username up or, a crypto key, private key. I think that totally could happen. Mistakes happen. But my point is that a lot of people don't have enough hacker situational awareness because that's sort of missing from the pipeline of teaching people about security. That, of course, for them, we set up the default, we did the system, we cranked it out. I installed everything. Oh, but I don't have enough awareness to be like, nothing could stay default, or this new package I installed made an account. I think I do account that to like that kind of paranoia about personal, and maybe paranoia is the wrong word, but my point being that without an absence of knowing or playing around with that stuff or having experienced it, that's off your checklist. So constantly, because you've never suffered the the impact of being dropped in on a default or done it to someone. So how would you possibly know that that's like inviting it in? You're just like, I've set this system up. They done. Come back to it later. I'll change it later.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit for the last couple minutes, and you've presented your case, and I think we mostly agree with you that there's something lacking, there's something missing. We need to relight or reignite the spark of imagination, and getting more and more people to think like a hacker, think the hacker mentality, for whatever that means to whomever would make that statement. How do we get people there? What are some ideas? And this is an open question to anybody, myself included. How do we get people to think differently, think outside the box, think creatively, use their imagination, think deep, dark thoughts? What could go wrong? All of the above. We got nothing?
I can jump in.
John, you sure, jump in, please.
Oh, I shot one already. I just want to, I don't want to hog the whole thing.
Oh, that Joe, I think, said she has something.
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, some of the things that I do are going back to universities to talk to them. So in school, why that curiosity is important and why they should really learn to open their mind and be more inspired about what we do. So, I mean, I try to bring it back, not just, to university, but then back to high school, so that they really can kind of develop those skills as early and as often as they can. So when they get in and they start hitting some of those boxes around compliance, they can help be good advocates for why that's still important. So I know, that I don't know if that's controversial or not, but I mean, I think giving them the thought process and feeling like they're more empowered to be inspired and to do some of those things and push the boundaries, I think it definitely helps for some that are trying to stifle the process.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I think that's.
I didn't sell you there.
No, I think that's a key part. It's definitely speaking to people just, pre-security about that stuff. I think, now that I think about it, I think instead of trolling people on Clubhouse, I should try to do like a actual, you know what I mean? Like real, hacker contest event on there and see how that goes.
God forbid, open up your own Clubhouse and say, hey, I'm going to talk about things I care about and think about, and just let people listen, and maybe they'll pick something up.
Yeah, I know, but it's only so many hours. Last time I did a talk on Clubhouse about metaverse, and went for 7 hours. I was like, I was working the whole time too. It was kind of ill. But anyway,
that's the hacker trait of not knowing how to walk away and
I think
man's got to know his limitations.
Yeah, well, definitely, like I said, I think organizationally you would want to create, scenarios. I think another thing is that I think is fun, which not everybody gets to do. So, all right, so check this out. Imagine a scenario where, and this is important because this is, like I said, related to one of the organization's Visions 2030 that I work with, is the idea of fostering imagination in taking a second. And I don't know if you guys, you guys probably have been involved in something like this where you come in and you think about all the different terrible scenarios you can think of, right? Or different scenarios. And then you just ask people what they think about it. What would they do in that situation? What is their imagination? What could they imagine could happen? And you'd be surprised how just asking someone what they think and empowering them is so powerful. Instead of telling them to just do this and get it done, asking them in a lot of ways is a beautiful way into saying, I appreciate what's in your mind. And if they are blank, then, hey, maybe I can't really rely on this, which is terrible, but it is true. Maybe this isn't the, you know what I mean? What's that? Remember that commercial? The most interesting man in the world. Sometimes I play that shit. He goes,
right.
He goes, find the thing you don't do well, and then don't do that thing. So if a person's mind is blank about it, you know what the deal is. But the bigger point I want to make is that you'd be surprised. So just even running an imagination scenario with other security people who are open to it. By the way, like I said, some people, their mind, they're better off just on the computer. But you'd be surprised how many people's eyes and mind lights up because they're like, oh shit, I have a place at the table, and they respect my ideas. And you can find out instantly where they're at, what they're thinking. I think running those kind of work groups would do wonders rather than just saying, here's this. I think ultimately that's true no matter what, everything that I've ever done, or even just traveling. When you ask people what they think and create those scenarios and stuff where they can use their imagination, they're more likely to use it. And like I said, it creates a rapport because that's the start of community, when you trust other people to listen to their ideas. And the best part about imagination is that you're not committed to doing it. So it's yo, if you can make it a relaxed environment. So anyway, that's one scenario. And not to mention, then it feels all like cool and like, yo, here I am. We're creating a dream, a dream document and stuff. Yo, this is going to be our little Bible of like, worst case scenarios. It really makes them feel like they're on like a super dope committee, which, like I said, I don't know if you ever been in like certain kind of like those kind of dream scenario, task force where, you go over all the different things, which once again, when I relate back to the, the 9/11 document about the failure of imagination. Like I said, just allowing people to dream it up will give them, it's so much gravitas that they'll be like, holy shit, I'm in this. And versus like, let's say, I'm a compliance drone. I think, but like I said, I think ultimately you want to figure out different scenarios like that to keep it real fun, to encourage people to make it like, oh shit, this is great. So instead of them like looking on Zillow for a piece of property because they're getting paid so much to just go over a checklist, make it fun. And then you can cope that fun in activities that actually make people inspired to learn and love what they do, and the parts about hacker culture that are amazing. That part where you want to discover shit and you're just like, wow, I came up with this shit, or I found this hole. And, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's amazing feeling. I mean, anyone on this Zoom who's, who can admit it, that they dropped into, a system unauthorized, knows that feeling's amazing. And, if you could bottle that up and have them feel that too with their own accomplishments, that would be something. And I think there's multiple ways to it. Hopefully I gave a few here. I mean, I don't mind rolling it off the whole clip, but we don't have that much time. But hopefully those were 2 or 3.
No, those are good ideas. I grew up in a generation where I see a lot of analogies in movies and TV shows, and I keep, as you were talking about, giving people opportunities to be creative and to use their imagination. I kept thinking 2 things. One, Heartbreak Ridge, Clint Eastwood movie, where his platoon has been trained to be attacked by surprise by the other platoon that's supposed to succeed, and they're supposed to die in a loud and grotesque Marine Corps manner. They've been conditioned to lose, in other words, and not think creatively. The other thing is just simply the Karate Kid. I don't think all these exercises need to be strictly based on, attack scenarios related to, technology and IT and the network. That, it's getting people to think outside of the box. The wax on, the wax off, the paint the fence, and they don't know why they're doing it, but it becomes part of their muscle memory to react in a certain way and respond in a certain way. To which I think of all the years that I was involved with youth groups, and we would do sort of brain teaser exercise to get the kids to think and work together, like, give them a box of popsicle sticks and tell them they had to build a platform that's like at least 12 inches off the ground, and it's got to support a bowling ball type of thing. And they've got nothing but popsicle sticks and whatever they can scrounge up, or here's a 2x4 and a 3-foot piece of rope, and here's a 6-foot wall. Get your group on the other side. You can't go around it. You got to go over it. Just stupid stuff, but make them think, MacGyver-like, and just be creative like that.
Sure, let me jump in real quick. Like, one thing that I do logistically is I'll have instead of like, using compliance, they usually have the annual security training, that sort of stuff, where all your employees and engineers need to go to, right? Even your salespeople, all that kind of stuff. I'll put on a training workshop where everybody can participate. I want you at your laptop. You're going to go ahead and look up if your password was pwned on haveibeenpwned.com. And I think that, and one of the things that I do in that is, all right, I'll give 2 or 3 scenarios each slide on how, as an attacker, I would attack that thing, and then start asking people what they might might do from their different perspectives, because like your API engineer is going to have something different than like your AWS infrastructure engineer. These sessions go really well so far as inspiring people to think in a certain way. Then maybe 2 or 3 months later, we'll do like our own internal CTF where we invite all the different engineers and stuff. But I guarantee everybody walks away from that kind of training workshop where it's a bit hands-on instead of your typical security training, being a bit inspired to think a little bit differently. But I don't think that like, but yeah, I think that that's like one good way and one logistical way that I do things to kind of get people into in real life at work into that hacker mindset and thinking about that stuff. And it does make the team stronger, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah,
Make a
that's
secret
definitely fun
PDF
stuff.
of their ideas, right? And then you disseminate the PDF, and then it makes them feel.
Well, they start tripping like a little bit, because I'll give the story of, hey, so, if I see a bunch of hash passwords, here's a tool that I would use. Or, hey, if I'm trying to guess a password for an entire org, I do company name. You know what I mean? I would have my search do company name, spring, fall, winter, whatever the season is, and then that year, which usually meshes up with the compliance, got to change it 4 times, quarterly, got to this, got to that, like all those compliance rules. So yeah. I'll tell them what I would do. I'd be like, hey, listen, I'm going to take these compliance rules and try to see if I can find something vulnerable just from that. And then like that particular example gives so many engineers like and practitioners aha moments. Like they're like, oh my God, but it's like simple. It's a simple pen testing thing to me, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of, but it gets them thinking along those lines, even if they have not put their hands on keyboard to do those specific things. They're like, oh my gosh, that specific thing is a thing. Maybe with my own knowledge, like they'll incorporate something from their own knowledge and they'll come up with something. And then internally, they're coming to me adding stuff to a risk register after that particular workshop. So I think that that's like a really good way for businesses to do that. And I don't think it needs to just be internal security teams that get that kind of stuff, but entire engineering teams, like bring the salespeople, let them think about that kind of stuff too, because you never know.
Yeah. And I think it inspires them and they might have great ideas. I think ultimately, people sometime, the truth is that most adults, don't get a chance to be imaginative as much as they would like to be or hear their voice heard. You would think, you know what I mean? I'm finally an adult. My voice needs to be heard more, finally it's my chance to speak. And you realize, holy shit, man, I have more chances to speak in grade school than I do now. I think, no, that's great. I think, you should have, and the thing is, you want to have those conversations with everybody and make it fun, not tedious. You want them to leave to come and feel empowered and feel, everybody, because the engineers, seem like the first line that needs to be, security minded, but sometimes it has to go all the way to the mailroom if that even exists anymore. But you know what I'm saying? Right. Like I feel, right. Everybody in the organization, or institution needs that awareness. I mean, I think we all do in our, our daily lives. I mean, people get compromised all the time, and having that awareness, it helps everybody, both not only in their personal life, but also in the identity they have within, a given organization who, it's to their own benefit to make sure that the place is secure, because, makes heads roll faster than a huge breach and money drop.
Right. And you wouldn't even believe so at first when I was developing that workshop, I was just like, I don't want anyone falling asleep on me. And security training is typically boring. So by doing that, it was more engaging. But I'll also say this. Your salespeople could even know about something in that sales process. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be tech. Like, some salespeople and even finance people have identified certain things to me that was in their process of making a sale, or depositing the money, or handling the money, and accounting, handling money, and all that kind of stuff. I found all sorts of stuff just process wise that somebody could SE or figure out just by letting these types of folks that are non-technical kind of get this kind of insight. Like, think like you want to take the money.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, somebody in sales might be someone that experienced a social engineering hack, and you're relying on someone else. They may be be able to front line on able to tell you that that there is someone actively trying to gain access via that method, it might occur to them like, oh wow, I think I was engaged in something like that, and I gave them information or not. But the point is that I do think that is true. Like, I think you have to engage everybody constantly in those discussions, which, once again, I understand, they cost money, time, but ultimately it's worth it. Including, like I said, there's also a societal effect. Just the person goes to another company, then they're a more secure employee, which helps that company be secure, which might, if they got hacked, might have repercussions for the company that they left. They may be connected in ways that are not, what I mean, on paper, on paper not connected, but industry wise, it could be a blow for both. So I think it serves a greater good for all of us to, for that. To go back to your other comment about extending hacker culture, that part of hacker culture. Everybody likes the other stuff, the clothing, the blah, 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 and the talk.
Yeah.
And grandmas say it, you know what I mean? You've been owned or whatever. But but that part, the security, the mindfulness of it, and I hate to sound all zen, but maybe that's how I got to do it. I feel, you need that hacker awareness and dig into it. Some people have it naturally. They're just naturally, either paranoid or aware. It's true. But you could teach it too and extend that a bit.
Yeah.
That part of the culture, I think it'll be good just overall. Because let me tell you, if I have another call from a friend, they're like, oh, my Instagram has gotten taken over and it's being held. I must have got so many personal friends call me for that.
Well, John, I'm afraid we've reached that time where we need to start wrapping things up. I do appreciate you coming on again today and just facilitating this conversation. Any final thoughts, parting thoughts?
I want to show you this thing real quick. So. Okay. In a little bit, I'm going to release NFT of authentic 90s hacking.
And that's why you're into crypto. Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe should I do a quick sneak peek?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let me see if I could do it. Am I sharing the screen?
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. That is authentic 90s hacking. Yellow pages, the real shit.
That's funny. I have 2 notebooks like this that I found recently.
Nice.
I might need to.
I had to leave all my notes at the office because it was all classified. Oh well.
Well, I'm gonna.
Are you gonna auction off the actual notebooks, or are you just gonna take pictures of it? I mean, truly NFT or
separately, and then if you buy it, you can have the option to get the physical page in a, you know what I mean, sent to you.
Gotcha. The values in the NFT. Who wants the original paper? That's so old school.
I know that's old school. Like, but yeah, it's gonna be authentic, and it might actually be too authentic.
That's pretty cool. All right. Well, that's going to wrap us for us today. Programming note, we're off next week because originally it was Security Weekly Unlocked, and we're not going to change that. So we will be back again in 2 weeks, and we're going to be speaking to Ben Carr, who's actually co-host on one of our other shows, Business Security Weekly. I knew Ben we crossed paths back at Tenable. He was the CISO at Qualys for a little bit. He was also at Visa for 4 years. So we're probably going to talk something about payments and PCI and compliance and security, what we do. Enjoy the week off. Hopefully you'll join us on the 16th for Unlocked Virtual, but we'll be back again on December 14th. So until then, stay secure, stay compliant, be creative, use your imagination. We're out.